Welcome to the HoCo Cyber Collective Podcast, where community, technology, and stories converge.
Hi, everyone. This is Colin Hamill. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the HoCo Cyber Collective Podcast. Today I have Dan Rocker, Solutions Architect Extraordinaire, and one of my people who I consider you actually a mentor who taught me how to do a lot of the stuff that I do. But Dan, it's good to have you on today.
No, thanks, Colin. It's cool you're doing this. Happy to be on.
Yeah. So just tell us the story tell us the story of Dan Rocker. Like, what is it? Tell us your it's just, an easy question, but what's your background? How did you get into this industry and what was your path into it?
Yeah, so I guess I could say I've always been a technologist at heart. Uh, as a I've always enjoyed learning how things work.
Right.
So like as a kid, I played a lot of video games, Sega Genesis, I was a true nerd, but I was an uncommon nerd. I'm that hybrid nerd athlete. So, right, I did a lot of sports growing up and all this compounds to me going to Hood College for my undergraduate and where I played lacrosse in Frederick, Maryland, not quite HoCo but Frederick County, which is still a fun county.
Yeah.
And I studied mathematics with a minor in computer science. And I went to Hood with the intent of studying environmental studies. But the program I wanted to do was called the Coastal Studies Program, and it occurred during one of the either during lacrosse season or during the off season where I still had practice. So I ended up never doing that. And my program head, I forget what you call them in departments. Her name was Dr. Betty Mayfield, and she got me into Georgia Southern University through her colleague back in the day, Dr. Martha Abel, and where I continued to study mathematics. And at Georgia Southern. And Georgia Southern's in Southern Georgia, way far away from Maryland. And 2013, I graduated there. And somewhat we're still at the end of an economic jobs recession. And there's this weird appetite for hiring overqualified, no experience kind of people. And that was me.
Yeah.
So I had a master's degree in math with nothing, worked what I would call odd jobs for about a year and a half, and got into the Hewlett Packard College New Hire program for solution architects. And at the time that was Hewlett Packard, a division of Hewlett Packard was the Enterprise Group. And that was who hosted that Enterprise Group, and another department essentially became what's known as Hewlett Packard Enterprise today. And so I worked for HP and Hewlett Packard Enterprise via that college new hire program. That is how I got to the industry, right?
Yeah, that's how we met.
Yep. So in that, right, Colin and I was a channel solution architect, but I'll pause there, right? So that's how I got there.
Right. Well, and I'll fill in a little bit. So that there was a gentleman by the name of David English who taught, because he was a left-hand storage. He knew everything about highly distributed, geographically distributed storage. But there was this guy named Dan Rocker who was they called him a converged solutions architect, which was a radical idea of it wasn't just storage, but it was also compute at the same time that you had to know.
It's funny. I almost forgot the way we branded ourselves at times. That's funny.
Well, and that's the thing. It's that it used to be that and again, it's fun to talk to you because we're solutions architects. And this college new hire program was an interesting thing because first off, I would have killed to have that sort of program available to me when I was getting into the industry. And it got a lot of young, talented people could you describe a little bit, like, what does the college new hire program look like?
Sure. Well, it still exists,
Yeah.
right? There's been pauses, but they have advertisements for current college seniors and graduates to apply for that still. I think it may have a slightly different moniker to it, but in the end, it's still a pre-sales new hire program, where the idea is to take technically inclined individuals, who have sales talents, selling abilities,
Yeah.
things like this, but a passion for solving problems is really the key there, right? Because as a solution architect, you listen to requirements and you map them towards your favorite.
Your menu,
Yeah,
your toolbox. You have a box of tools in which I can solve your problems with.
right, sure.
Usually,
So
I
I
align
was,
with what your
yeah,
reseller sells.
that's exactly right. And for me, that I was in a particular, how would you phrase it? Group of people. There's probably a better word for it.
Cohort.
Cohort, yeah.
Yeah.
Whom where that there was a lot more risks taken with who was selected there. There were, social studies teachers, mathematicians,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, and,
insights.
well, yeah, and that's it's fascinating because again, again, taking a step back, we are what we call solutions architects or sales engineers. When I was growing up, I didn't ever hear about that kind of job. That was because we're not just techie engineering people. I always joke that like we're the mole people, we're the most social, that they have elected us to go out and speak to the rest of the world. And then because those are the non-customer facing engineers that we are also friendly with and know how to deal with because we were friends with them growing up, but we would never put them in front of a customer. I mean,
I think there's a spectrum to it, right?
yeah,
And I think
that's a good word to choose because that usually is aligned with why they're like that, probably.
well, it's interesting, right? There's a you know all problem solvers are created differently, and
Yep.
I find that there's the spectrum lies from theoretical to practical,
Right.
right? And in that sliding scale, the more you take that person's favorite, if someone's more practical and you put them in a theoretical moment, that they start to panic, and those are your mole people engineers that because we all have that inside us.
Right.
When you're
Some
out
of
of
us control it a little better.
Yeah, that's right. Right. So there's a little Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde to all technical talent. And I think technical talent becomes uncomfortable when technical talent becomes uncomfortable, they become abrasive. I do it myself, right? Because we want to know. It's human nature. So what I found the college new hire program to benefit most people was around presentation skills, sharpening the ability of concise messaging.
Yep.
I had a lot of that experience through teaching at university and through experiences at Hood College through tour guiding and orientation. But the formalized business sales training that they offered there was not only like in-house, but like, go talk to this lady in a classroom for a
Well, and also,
day.
so Dan and I were peers. We went through, I think it was three-part training that we went through at the exact same time. Dave English was one of the trainers, and so there were some cool things that, again, how to use PowerPoint, frankly. That was the first time I remembered where PowerPoint was like, we don't have a quoting software. We quote through a PowerPoint presentation. And that was sort of like oh, that's a different way of doing things.
Well, yeah. So for me, that was always been matter of fact, which kind of sucks, right? Because it's become so pervasive, right? But if you're trying to tell a story, any type of slideware is going to aid you, right? Visual aids are called that for a reason. They've been abused and bastardized, right? But all of those things need to be taught, right? So I think HP had a very good channel enablement structure at the time I was A, learning the business, and B, um,
The,
interacting with people like you.
the,
Naturally
the
get
fact that we were in the same exact class, to me as a partner, told me that I was getting good training because I was getting the exact same training that HP was giving their own people, which was
Yep.
awesome because it meant that when you and I worked together on, unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of three-part opportunities. I did get to sell one though. When I was at my previous role, it was like a sweet, like $3.2 million three-par with like they were running. Oh, you'll appreciate this. They were an analytics company that was running their primary workloads, which was Oracle, on a massive 3-par array with nothing but nearline SAS drives. They were backing that up to a different disk pool of nearline SAS drives, and then they were backing that up to a tape library. And when it was come time to refresh, they just wanted like fast class drives or whatever the other spinning drive. And I'm like, have you considered like all flash? And they're like, would that help? And I'm like, yeah, it would. And so it was like I used like all the tricks that I learned at like CTI for making lots of options to give. I think I got like 300 terabytes of a tier of all flash. And from what I heard was when the Oracle people went from nearline SAS to all flash, that was a little bit of a boost to their
Yeah, and
productivity.
now yeah, NVMe did the same thing, and it's still Flash, right? And
It's slightly better. We were solutions architects with storage in a very magical time in a way where we saw the transition where and again, what we're talking about is the same kind of storage device that's in your phone. Doesn't have any moving parts. It used to be like you'd see, if you saw pictures of a data center or something, you'd see rows and rows of servers. Most of them were just spinning disks. And when we were going through and systematically replacing them, I used to say it was like replacing a horse and cart with a jet. Suddenly, sizing was more of a how many terabytes do you want and not how fast do you need them to be.
or sometimes how many can you afford? And
That was the other cool thing was that the cost, it used to be that this stuff was unthinkable for anyone outside of the Fortune 500, and then it was used in small doses as cash and stuff like that. And then through just the beauty of technological development, which we've seen, the cost kept going down and down and down to the point where I'm buying test machines that have a solid state drive in them for less than $100. It's a little HP ultra slim form factor desktop that has 240 gigabytes of solid state. When you and I started that, we would have called that a host server, and it would have cost like $20,000. And now it's being sold for $100. It's crazy.
well, not all Flash is created equal, right? And
You are a good solutions architect. Well,
but you're right. We did go through a very rapid set of changes.
that made certain aspects of our job easier, which actually made it so that, at least for me, especially because we were asked to look to know more and more and more. Like before we were both started, like in the good old days, I guess, you could just know servers or you could just know storage. That was one thing I remember about Dave English was that he almost prided himself on not knowing anything about the compute layer because he was a, highly tenured, really talented left-hand specialist. That was what he knew. Um, but then there was these younger people, and then all of a sudden Dan Rocker was the only guy who was coming, and Dave was gone because there was a philosophical change that these college new hires were, if nothing else, more affordable, and they also knew more things. So I remember sometimes it would be like you had a clown cars like of SEs where here's my compute guy, here's my fiber guy, here's my storage guy, here's my backup, and so it was almost impossible to schedule meetings. And so if you'd agree, we were asked to do more and more and more in the name of efficiency almost.
Well, and you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I think it's a very nuanced subject because
Oh yeah.
There's value to generalization, right? Inch wide or mile
How wide,
wide,
inch
inch
deep.
deep,
Yeah.
versus
You can
inch deep.
talk the language, but we ain't installing
Right.
it.
Right. So, and I think that matters too, right? I think I think there's room for all kinds of technical talent to find a role with the same title as solution architect that could be completely theoretical to completely practical to completely generalized to completely specialized. And it's more or less a factor of where you work.
Right. Yeah. And how the company that pays you makes money.
Right. Who signed your check is going to obviously dictate that. But I'm not, I'm not certain the market's forced the general technologist to have an understanding of these things. But
Right.
obviously, you're not required in the age of public cloud. You can,
Well, and I'll say that so that I've seen again that this college. You were one of the earlier members of the college new hire.
yeah, it was
I
second.
once seen it.
Yeah.
So I had again. I worked with other college new hires where there were things I loved about it. It would have been a great opportunity. And this isn't that they're bad, but there was a lot of it was a vicious like they basically are taking a kid fresh out of college, 24 years old, giving them an intensive 12 to 18-month training, and then you throw them to the wolves. And
Yeah, let them bake. Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with that. I succeed in that because of my athlete, right?
well,
The athlete.
you survive. So yeah, I survive too. The ones that make it through the wall are usually okay with it. The ones that are dead at the bottom of the wall don't usually.
I'm okay with that, right? This
Right.
role is not for everyone.
No,
And,
it's not.
and I think at 24, 22, 26,
Oh my God.
you can make the mistake of trying to be a solution architect because the next time that you'll get the opportunity will be in your late 50s if you stayed in tech. And
Right.
honestly, that is a great time to reintroduce into those kind of roles.
You have the
It,
benefit
it,
of perspective.
it is a different industry, and we're talking about sellers to businesses, right? There's enterprise architects inside these businesses making
Right.
these same architectural decisions for their app, right? So the the people that fall out of being a solution architect as a seller oftentimes are the same good creative people that can make good customer success managers. Excuse me. um good enterprise architects inside organizations, public cloud architects, analysts, because it's all that same brain, but
Right.
just like a snowflake, right? Like
Oh, different.
you need to fall into the right spot if you're going to turn into a snowman, right? So
That's a great point. And at the right time with the right technology, because you and I didn't, we had a certain amount of freedom, but you could not when you were working for HP is like, you know what would really solve your problem? Dell EMC. That is the superior solution because I mean, you could probably do that once, and then I don't think I'd be working with you anymore.
well, yeah, I mean, there's always a
There's a
cordial way to go about it, right? When I worked for HPE, you know, the, their story was I would say was not very focused on file storage. File storage.
they had yeah,
You had
they had
Store Easy, which was a glorified Windows file server, which is still very functional and relevant for many use cases, but it's not NetApp ONTAP. It's
no.
not Isilon OneFS and all these new modern options. It's not vast distributed storage, etc. Um, software defined storage has also become very popular in this time.
Yep.
Where as you,
Especially with cloud, yeah.
yeah, sure. So, like, long story short, I think there's a right way to go about it. There's an art and a science to handling those things.
Right.
One of the reasons I like being at a reseller now, is you are able to be more consultative.
And
And,
not yeah. The,
and if you like doing homework and making comparisons, right? It's, that's half the job, right?
yeah.
So if you like being told how to run your playbook and you like knowing something very intimately, all of a sudden these a vendor style might be more interesting because you have that opportunity to get really good at
Yeah.
it.
And it was just that there's an ecosystem that I discovered existed that once you got to the enterprise, there seemed to be I don't want to call it incestuous, but it's kind of incestuous because there would always be this moment where everyone would introduce themselves, and it was always this, well, I worked at this manufacturer, and then I worked for a partner, and then I worked for another manufacturer, and then another partner. And there was just this carousel of progress where almost all previous SEs that I met at HP had previously worked at a partner, and that wasn't an accident because,
Well, it's a skill set thing,
right,
right?
yeah,
At some point, as a solution architect, I think now they measure the number at like 18 months. I wouldn't even say for a solution architect, for any job. If you spend 18 months in any job, your likelihood of getting a title, that same title again, is like it goes up like crazy after 18 months.
That makes sense because you're gathering data on, hey, I'm a solutions architect. Okay, I should get a job and also once I knew the word solutions architect or sales engineer, there's a lot of different words for it, but the one thing that sort of in a general that if you're people that are listening are wondering if this is the world for you, I say that I'm like a translator. I speak a bunch of different languages. I speak the language of sales. I speak the language of business. So I can talk about CapEx versus OpEx, consumption versus purchasing. I speak the language of tech. I can't do the tech, but I can talk to the engineers and write a scope of work and communicate in such a way that they know what I'm actually talking about. I know the language of the customer and the language again of sales because you and I they pair us, we're usually paired with a sales rep, and I don't know how they did it, but usually the sales rep is the one that's getting most of the commission. We're working because of the love of the job, needing to make a number or whatnot, but a lot of the time we were the doer. We were the one who did all the research and made the sales rep look good. Or as I like to say, I got really good at hiding the twitch I would get when a sales rep would make a real declarative statement about what we could or could not do. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Let me
I always like to say
it depends. It depends.
yeah, so compensation drives behavior, right? And
Sure does.
architects are compensated less per deal because we don't have to find that opportunity, right? We also don't have to close that opportunity. We're in that middle part
Right.
where we say this is a great idea for you, or that's a horrible idea. You should do it this way.
Here's a
And
better idea.
here's probably a different way to look at the problem. Whatever, however you want to sell, that's fine,
Sure.
right? But salespeople have a different set of skills. Some of them are very technical and able to stretch into the conversation of a solution architect. Some are not, and it in every industry there's that teamwork balance where you have to understand how to work together. And there's a reason sales reps in our industry tend to work with the same solution architect for quite some time, because there is a yin and a yang to it that is required to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think that same yin yang experience occurs for project managers with deployment engineers. Um, I'm not sure if I could think of a good example outside tech, but those things matter. And it's always fun to navigate those
Like a
dynamics.
sports like football or baseball, these are specialized positions. Some people are very specialized, but without all of them, the whole thing, at the very least, you'll be less successful. At worst, you will fall flat on your face because you just don't have the right team around you to be able to.
Well, it's all about risk mitigation.
Right.
At the end of the day, you know, the farther you get away from that sales rep, just kidding, right? But there's a sliding scale of how do you take risk out of anything, right? By doing analysis, by comparing alternatives, by understanding considerations for deployment, ongoing costs, replacements,
Yep.
maintenance, all these things. Um, the best solution architects are able to distill all of that and tell you why or what to expect. As a college new hire, you're
You're right.
you're going to find those things out, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to get bruised up. But that's where I was able to rely on my partners, um, and use their experience where I didn't have it, right? And
Yep.
pay attention, right? I think one of the biggest things my peers failed with that didn't last as long as I may have, and I only lasted 6 years.
I mean,
Um,
that's an eternity in the tech industry, honestly.
yeah, it was, right? But I didn't necessarily think I was ready to sell directly to customers, although that's what I do now here at
Yeah,
CAS.
I was gonna say, you're like, yeah, well,
Well, I had never done that. I had always supported channel
people
partners.
like me that did
Right.
it. Yeah.
And I had done some end user selling, but I wasn't necessarily directly paid on it. Right.
Right.
Um, and even here, it's a different structure in the way where I'm able to help customers think more broadly.
Mhm.
And that is fun and exciting. And I think for new people, just it takes so long to get to that point that it could be very discouraging. And then you could argue what percentage of pre-sales gets conquered by AI?
Well,
And
that is actually so great minds think alike. That was one of the topics I wanted to bring to is because I would think that so the statement I'll make is that people like you and I, we represented a high overhead. We're well compensated, we're well trained, we're very good at our jobs. We are the best of us are obviously, but the hard part was we weren't directly billable. So it was always like we're like electricity. You need to have electricity in order to get sales, but how much percentage of it is worth that? It was always really hard to quantify that stuff because my time was almost always given away for free. They didn't bill for me to go on site, and the problem I found with some customers is when you give away something for free, they abuse it. They ask for like 16 different options and three different technologies and iterations, and can you change that? And then they go, oh, by the way, I bought it from somebody else. I'm like, you get to do that to me once, and then
right. And that can happen, right? I think
those are gut punches when that happens. But yeah,
yeah, but yeah, on the you're not wrong. You make some interesting points, right? In general, we're not used as billable resources, and we do those iterations in good faith that we'll do business together.
right,
That
yeah,
is a business model. Not every reseller and value added partner works that way,
right.
right? They are. I mean, solution architects are billable resources,
Right. Yeah. That
and
in
it
some
will
ways would
take
make it easier, but you know, it's
8 hours or 1 day of time for an analysis of the problem statement, and here's a potential solution. Blah blah blah. I I think personally right now I think LLMs are so bad at math that I don't like the commercially free available ones. Let me put it that way. Are have a high potential to screw math up, and it doesn't surprise me, right? Because
right.
eventually you're taking
You're taking
a string and trying to make it an
a
integer.
deterministic problem.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I'm bastardizing a lot. I'm really not an expert. Like I couldn't build an LLM if I wanted from that perspective. I think I could figure out how to deploy one pretty
Here's the
quickly.
trick: to speak about it with total confidence, and everyone will believe that you obviously know what you're talking about.
I tend to sell myself a little short, but um, I think at the end of the day, we're dealing with AI tool sets, whatever you consider an AI tool set, whether it's a chatbot, something you interact with, agentic, whatever. It's the worst it's ever going to be, right? And I think if you operate from that standpoint, any job can be cannibalized on that time scale. Um, I think the best architects and designers of things will leverage those tools to become better at their jobs so that I think that high overhead, how do you quantify type statement, I've always said, right, like I don't feel like a solution architect in my job. I feel like the glue guy. I'm the translator between,
Yeah, yeah.
right, like you mentioned, and you need that. And I think and this is why I consider myself very lucky for my training at Hood College, because I think that and the college new hire program, that multidiscipline liberal arts assimilation style of critical thinking is required when AI tool sets free up time. So
Right.
if you're someone who knows how to build spreadsheets very well and you're a great macro guy, but now Google Gemini can create that macro correctly very quickly, or get that person to, so what do they do now?
Yeah.
How do they apply that skill set? And the ones that will be successful and continue to be trained and continue to be promoted will be the ones that are able to critically think about how to apply these things.
Right.
I just think it's going to happen so fast. A lot of people are going to get caught up in it.
Well, and I'm just thinking about what you just said, where if I had, because I did that, a lot of spreadsheets, if I found a tool that would automate, it's the question of, do you automate your own job out of existence, which to me always seemed rather silly, or that, listen, all this special stuff I was doing can be done like that. Well, I freed up time. What additional value add? Or maybe now with the assistant, I can write super macros that were way more complicated than I. Because again, I speak as a solid C undergraduate comp sci programmer, where I realized very quickly, like, listen, if you need memory leaks or core dumps, I'm your man. But it was not. But now with these tools, someone who, again, by my own admission, was at best a mediocre programmer, I can look at code and read it and with effort understand. I can look at AI generated code. I won't be able to find like if there's like a really subtle error, but I can tell if I also know how to structure my queries because I know these are the inputs, these are the outputs, this is the object oriented design. There was the theoretical stuff that I picked up on that it would be an assistance, I guess, to bring it back to the college new hire program, because this is so I'll just share a story that like my previous job that I worked at, it was at a large reseller and we were selling, it was a storage solution. And this storage company had again, like all the other ones, had a college new hire program. And the guy that I was paired with, it was like his third opportunity ever. And they had a lot of this company had given a lot of tools, like a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of macros, where there was this thought that training that you and I got from the senior guys could be in some ways automated. This is probably the early version of AI, that if we just give them a smart tool, the problem was, and you know how this is, the customer had, to be blunt, set up their storage in a really stupid way, a way that nobody would ever really do, but they had done it that way. And the punchline was this guy's tool didn't work. And he was panicking. He had apps like, oh God, like, how are we going to size this thing? And then I went back to my training and I remembered how you and Dave English had taught me, well, this is how you do it. And I actually suggested, like, well, what if we go through the methodicals? Sizing a storage array is not like this weird unknown thing. We can do that. He's like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm like, really? Like that's, the guy didn't end up cutting it, but it was just like this thought that like you only learned how to drive a car that's an automatic transmission. You have no idea how a manual works. And heaven forbid you ever find yourself in a situation where the only thing in front of you is a manual transmission. You're done because you don't know what to do.
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities to fail in our business.
That is the truth.
And the opportunities I see people fail the most is when they aren't willing to ask for help or say they don't know. Let me get back to you. If you try to be a hero and you're not ready to wear the cape, you will crumble. And the lights
warning to others, basically.
The lights get bright, right? They do. And you got to be able to handle that pressure as a solution architect, because at the end of the day, it's your design. So if you don't have that creativity, sense of ownership, completeness, it's a very stressful job, right? There's other technical jobs that don't have that stress, where you can still be creative and accomplish these things, right?
Sure.
Or if you don't want to be creative and you want to bash code and be a sysadmin or something, right? You want to automate things and develop scripts, and you want to make a button.
I want square pegs to put in my square holes, and that is what I shall deploy.
It's all out there. It's moving rapidly,
Mhm.
but it's out there.
That's a
I
really good
yeah.
information of it. Well, and so I guess just to take the next step. So when Dan and I started, the cloud, this whole moving to the cloud was just really starting to start. We were now hybrid solutions architect. Can you speak a little bit more to how like your that sense of ownership and control and knowledge? Can you speak to how that changed, if at all, as you started deploying more cloud-based solutions into your solutions that you're building?
So when I came over here to this reseller, I only knew HP, right? So
Right.
I
Yeah.
had to learn Azure. I had to learn AWS. I haven't spent much time in GCP, to be fair. I've learned more OCI than I have GCP, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Um, Learning uh, public cloud from the ground up is a rewiring of the infrastructure brain when you think infrastructure is the way one vendor might paint the world. And
Right.
and so you learn very quickly where your blind spots are. I think public cloud demands a stronger networking background than most people take credit for. And if you don't understand networking, you kind of will hit a wall in public cloud design, in best practice cloud design. Eventually, you're going to run into private public. Eventually, you're going to run into natting, uh, egress, layer 2, layer 3. So you're going to run into these things, and then you're going to pay a bill for them, and then you're going to, and
Yeah.
then you're going to get asked to read that bill. Um, that is where I personally had my biggest challenges. Luckily, I had some network training priorly, so it like wasn't completely foreign. But then learning the vernacular of every public cloud is unique in its own right.
Well, they're this is I don't know who it was, but I think it was someone at HP. This is my favorite sticker that I ever saw because, and I think I will argue that the current crop of kids, because we're not kids anymore, have only ever come from a world of the cloud. And the cloud, to be blunt, has won the argument for the last 10 years. And so, to the point where it is the assumed method by which you will deploy.
So I think the stats are misleading. I think public cloud is growing and is larger than on-premise infrastructure, and it's also growing at a faster rate than on-prem is growing. But on-prem is growing.
Right.
And
It's
I
not as
think,
fast.
and what is the number one use case in public cloud? You'd think it's AI GPUs, it's backup and archive
Yep.
and email.
And just as an aside, because you just said that, I'm like, yeah, backup and archive. That's your role. Understand it, and that would make some cloud people kind of angry if you said that.
Well,
But how dare you imply that I am just
and so yeah, so people will probably say that's really reductive to do it in that way, but those are the primary use cases of widespread use that every customer is doing, right? I think the ease of operations of these cloud overlays have impacted everything. To your point, these young people interact with PyTorch and notebooks and newer tools that function very differently than SSHing into a jump box.
right. Yeah, but it was just that knowledge that I had that because there's the word I would use that I hated. I'd like to hear your opinion on it. I hated marketecture is what I called it, where especially when it was a competitor that had marketecture that I had to argue against what I knew was just made of pure balonium, but they had really slick marketing. So what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah, it's tough, right? I think I get myself in trouble a lot when I call that crap out as I see it. I think as a young person, you have no ability to see those things.
Right.
I say young person, but
We're young adjacent, Dan. It's okay.
any
I mean, you're young
new
as me.
hire,
I'm 43
anyone
years
who's
old.
new,
So it's,
right? Because you might get someone from industry XYZ that comes into tech sales or
right.
whatever. And you don't have a litmus test of what
Well,
is
imagine
marketing versus
a college new hire program for an AI for LLMs or something like that. That person is going to extol the virtues of LLMs with, like it's a wisdom received from on high. But to your point, they don't have perspective. It's just what they've been taught.
and that's tough, right? So that's the biggest part of the learning curve coming out of the new hire program is
Right.
what do people actually care about?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
just real quick, that reminded me of something because I remember specifically in that HP training, it's like this case study will be of a typical customer that you might encounter. They leverage HP ProLiant, HP ProCurve for switching. They are a 3-PAR
yeah,
users. They are a Burra user, and it's like
exactly.
wow, an all HP customer. That's great when you can find them, but
Right.
reality, it's not typically what you're gonna run into.
No, usually life's a little messier. Usually, like they have less
That's for sure.
money than in
Yeah.
those scenarios. But what I find is like I find the right solutions always cost the right price, as
Right.
long as we all agree this is something we want to do together, right? And at the end of the day, that's how business is done. And when some people are uncertain whether that's a good idea, that's when deals stop, right? People buy from people. Um,
Right.
and sometimes even the best ideas don't happen, right? It's not a perfect
I
system.
didn't have a 100% win rate, so that is objectively true. The best team didn't always win. We're
Yeah.
also very humble in our opinion of our own work.
It takes time, right? And I think there's always new things to learn.
Yeah. And,
I
and just think about it, I joke, but that's almost the attitude you have to have if you're going to be good at this job is that like, no, this is the correct solution. I always called it being able to pass the essay portion where justify why you put that in there. This is the reason why we have secondary processors on here. Yes, it increases cost. However, there is a corresponding reduction in the risk of an individual node being taken out, which is going to impact your business. And if they said, well, I don't want that, okay, you can take that out, but I could at least it wasn't like, well, I wanted to make it more expensive, so I put that in there. That is not usually an acceptable answer.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now that DIMMs have gotten so large, there's a lot
It's
more
comical.
there's a lot more one processor builds out there now. And it is a lot more affordable. Um, because
I can
yeah,
get books
either
for
way, I
desktops that
digress.
have 32 gigabytes of RAM, 96 gigabytes of RAM in just a
Yeah,
desktop. And I'm like, we're in Star Trek. This is just made up numbers.
right.
Like, I need to have a cajillion IOPS or something like that, where we remember the before times where, you know, it was very relevant to what you were doing. That if you, and again, like you said before, it's our reputation that's on the line. If I assert to you, yes, this is the solution that can support your business workloads and it fails, that never
Yeah,
happened to me, but it was like, ugh, that would be
yeah,
bad.
you don't get a lot of at bats with the same customer,
No.
and it's a small industry.
Well, and one other thing I liked, so it was an experience that I'm sure you've had is I got trained on some of the sizing. This was for a backup. Again, these are the big cloud providers, and they were like, how to size this company's backup product, how big it was. And I had questions like, how do we know this is correct? And their answer was, well, you don't have to worry because the bill will be correct. So, as a solutions architect, how does that statement make you feel?
Yeah, I've gotten similar answers like that before.
Good
And
news, our solution is 400% more expensive than it was before. Like, ah, that's called undersizing, not again, if you tell that to a customer, they're not going to share in your enthusiasm for.
yeah, you get some weird ones out there. It happens.
It was so casual though that just that and again, it's again coming from you who taught me how to size. These are not like sizing is an art. A it's tribal knowledge. It's there is no that was the thing that I learned when I got to the enterprise was like yeah, Dan doesn't have like a magic tool that he uses that just spits out the correct answer every time. He's in the same boat you are. He has tools that he can show you, but there's still a certain amount of, based on my experience, based on the information you've gathered, the tool is only about half of it. The other half is the art, if you will, of the.
Hey, it's all part of.
That's why we like the job, honestly.
It's part of the job. Right?
It's fun, and that's why it was so fun when I worked at an enterprise. Is that when I was at CTI, and again, Dan was responsible for our training. He would come by, I think, like once a month, every other month, and teach me about the latest thing. There was a reason why CTI had the year of the store once, where I went to literally every single one of our customers and I sold them the exact same thing. You're getting Veeam through HP Complete. You're getting a store once. And if you've got a NetApp, I'm setting up Veeam. You're getting Veeam Enterprise Plus because I can send those. And see, that was the thing that I liked. I'm like, wait a minute. I can take a NetApp snapshot and write it to an HP storage? Wow. And of course, most normal people don't care. But for me, I was like, it was a scientific thing. Like, and I think I might have told you about this. I had found a way that I could combine HP Store once with Pure Storage and make their FlashBlade have deduplication by introducing VMware virtualization in the middle of it and having virtualized Store Once VSAs running on top of a FlashBlade architecture. And you could get an all-flash experience that was just as data efficient as Dell EMC, but with the performance of all-flash. And that was at a time where Dell EMC did not have an all-flash backup target, but it required you to. I remember when I did the deal registration, because we had a deal registration team, and I put in, I need a registration for HPE storage and Pure Storage. And the person came back and said, that's not possible. Pure and HP, they can't be part of the same solution. And I'm like, yes, it can. Please, please, please put it in. Trust me. And if you don't, I also know all these tools, so I'll just go in and do it myself. But, that was always the fun thing about HP, was that knowing how their tools worked was like, I feel, and I actually wonder, I always was suspicious because you were on the inside, that I got the sense when I was at CTI that I was the nerd who was reading all of the terms and conditions of all these programs. And there must have been a standing thing that's like, all right, if Colin Hamill sends you an email that's really long and he's highlighted like lots of text and stuff, just give him what he's asking for, because he is not going to give that one up, because he's very confident that he's correct. That was, one of those little value adds that we do.
Well, Colin, this has been helpful. I have to end it here.
Yeah, but so Dan, thank you so much for cowboying up, and I know you've been feeling it's really great catching up with you. Again, CAS Severn is the company that Dan's working for today, and that I used to work for them too, actually. But Dan, it was great talking to you. So again, thanks everyone, and I'll sign off afterwards with thanks everyone for joining this podcast. I hope you found this interesting. So join us next time for another episode of the HoCo Cyber Collective Podcast. And thanks very much. Signing off.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you for listening to the HoCo Cyber Collective Podcast. Stay connected, stay curious, and join us again for our next episode.
Brought to you by the HoCo Cyber Collective.